again, everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solie, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories. I am Ray Russell, and this week it's back to Georgia Championship Wrestling, circa 1982. Yet again, going to close out the month. Going to try to close out the month of February here already in the Georgia Project, and in order to do that, going to bring back on Mr. Jammie Ward, Jamie Jam Ward, back to the program.
Great to be back. I got my sleeves all rolled up, ready to dive in head first.
You know, they say, you go around to the pools, the public pools anyway, they give you that no diving ordeal. So, yeah, I don't know if that's the wisest thing to do back here in the Georgia world of 82, but we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully Jamie comes out on the other end okay, unscathed. But we're going to jump back into things, Jamie, because we have more than 2 weeks of wrestling to get into. We're going to cover the second half of February 82, including 2 episodes of TV, a bunch of house shows in between, and hopefully we make it to the big Omni card, February 28th, closing out the month. So let's get going, guys. You ready, Jamie?
I'm ready. It might have been the shortest month of the year, but it had most of the action.
It had a lot of action. We're too early in the year to tell on what's to come, but I can tell you right now that there's a lot of great names and fun stuff coming, guys. As we head off to Chattanooga, Tennessee Memorial Auditorium, February 13th, Ricky Harris over Tommy Rogers, Brad Armstrong battling Buzz Sawyer to a draw. It's Bullet Bob Armstrong over Kevin Sullivan, Jimmy Garvin scoring a win over Outlaw Ron Bass in a Texas death match. Main event, going to see a lumberjack match. Tommy Rich and Bad Leroy Brown come to town, defeating the National Tag Team Champions, the Masked Superstar and Super Destroyer, by disqualification. So even if the titles were on the line, looks like the Masked Men will retain. Garvin and Bass in a Texas death. We got the Armstrongs and singles matches. Lots of fun stuff there in Chattanooga.
Yeah, nobody went home disappointed with that show. I wouldn't think anyway.
Now, got a couple of smaller cards moving forward, February 14th and 15th, respectively. Marietta, Georgia, Cobb County Civic Center. Kevin Sullivan over Tommy Rogers. Brad Armstrong downing the French Angel. Aw, I'm sure Jamie's not happy with that. Ron Bass, double count out with Jimmy Garvin this time. Main event, going to see Buzz Sawyer teaming with the Superstar. Now, there's a fun team over Leroy Brown. And, hey, Big Red making a stop through. And then again, I said February 15th, we're in Augusta, Bell Auditorium. Tom Prichard still here over Ricky Harris, or just getting here, I should say, over Ricky Harris. Scoring a win, too, is Prichard over Harris. Brad Armstrong defeating the French Angel, Bob Armstrong. Again over Sullivan by disqualification this time around. We saw Garvin beat Bass in a Texas death a couple days ago. This time, it's Bass over Jim Garvin, Texas death in Augusta. And Tommy Rich and Leroy Brown once again defeating Superstar and Buzz Sawyer. That's quite the team.
It's a very interesting team. I mean, 2 guys that can really go against Tommy Rich and Leroy Brown.
I don't know how whacked out Buzz Sawyer was by this point, but I would have to imagine once he reaches that level of Buzz Sawyerism, I'm thinking Bill Eadie would say, yeah, I can't team with this guy.
Well, it's probably one and done. We'll have to keep a close eye on that situation.
I feel like Eadie's one of those just short list of guys that was just no nonsense, but not in a badass way, just in a intellectual way. Like, I'm above this kind of nonsense. I refuse to deal with this guy. So I just kind of picture Eadie walking and going, yeah, no. But we roll on, guys. February 17th, Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium. Here's another card. Tom Prichard over Rick Harris. Jimmy Garvin defeating the French Angel, the Armstrongs. Going to team up tonight over Kevin Sullivan and Buzz Sawyer. Had to be a fun one. Texas Tornado, the Armstrongs versus Sullivan and Sawyer.
Oh, yeah, I would have paid to see that as the main event. That's a damn good match right there. And Texas Tornado rules with all 4 guys in the ring.
Yeah, it had to be a wild one for sure. You talked about coming there for that match, and we still got 2 more matches on the card in Columbus, including Ron Bass over Tommy Rich in a bull rope match. Noticeably, the national title not on the line there, but Bass scoring a win over the Wildfire. That's pretty big.
Oh, absolutely is. And as we've discussed before, that's kind of foreshadowing something that might happen down the line.
Yeah, well, things to come for certain. National Tag Team titles on the line in the main event as Leroy Brown and Ron Fuller defeat the Masked Superstar and Super Destroyer. Unfortunately, by disqualification, the titles again retained to the Masked Men here in Columbus, Georgia, which leads us to February 18th, Athens, Georgia. Again, it's Superstar and Super D in the headliner over Leroy Brown and Big Red. So Big Red making the smaller towns. Also on the card, Tommy Rogers over Ricky Harris, Kevin Sullivan defeating Brad Armstrong, Jimmy Garvin over Buzz Sawyer by DQ. And we've seen Leroy team a little with Tommy Rich. We know he's been teaming with Ron Fuller, but with the Tennessee Stud working, also double duty, obviously up in Knoxville and whatnot, I'm assuming the nights he can't make it, we're getting Big Red in here on the smaller cities.
Yeah, we've only seen Fuller make a handful of house shows since he arrived in mid-January. So you're probably right. Big Red's kind of off of TV right now, and we have Big Red filling in for Fuller in the smaller places.
Right. Well, guys, it's another week of house shows in the books, and we're off to February 20th, Atlanta, GA, WTBS Studios for some more Georgia Championship Wrestling. All right, we are live to tape here in the studio of WTBS, February 20th. Your hosts are Gordon Soley and Rod Piper. As the Hot Rod has comments to kick off the show, he has learned that Bullet Bob Armstrong will in fact be in the studio today, while Roddy Piper is on the microphone. Apparently the Bullet can now contain himself, says Roddy. Well, that's okay, because if he can't, Piper promises he will contain Bob Armstrong himself. Gotta love that line, as Piper then brings in Gary Hart, manager extraordinaire. People around the country have been apparently telling Gary how great Roddy Piper is. Every time he's in an airport, they have to talk to him about the Hot Rod. And they can't wait for Piper to beat up that Bob Armstrong one more time. Gary also promising to return later in the hour with another demonstration of the Dragon Shai match.
And that should be a very interesting demonstration indeed. Plus, hey, did you notice the opening of the show? Roddy Piper shows his affection for Gordon Soley by wearing a matching suit as Gordon Soley. Both dressed in dapper blue suits. Ties are a little different, but they look like father and son out there.
Do you really think Roddy color coordinated with Gordon, or did it was just happenstance? I mean, you have to think, but Roddy does point that out. Very good point there, Jamie, that they do look alike this week, and only by the suit color, though. make a point of saying that.
See, it all depends if they happen to arrive in the airport at the same time on Saturday morning.
I gotcha, brother. Well, Piper, I love the lines here talking about, Bullet Bob says, oh, all of a sudden you can contain yourself and we can be in the same studio at the same time. All of a sudden you have, you can monitor your temper, says Piper about the Bullet. But he says, but that's okay, because if you can't contain yourself, I'll contain you for you. So Roddy Piper has some words here for Bullet Bob out of the gate. We don't see Bob early on, but we do see his son, Brad Armstrong, kicking things off against Rick Benefield. Referee here for hour number 1 is Nick Patrick. Roddy Piper talks about Bob sending his son Brad to wrestle on TV because Bob, he might be afraid to be in the studio at the same time as Piper, at least this early in the show. The Bullet is here, however, guys, mind you. As Roddy Piper admits, this Brad Armstrong kid is getting better by the week. He must have forgotten about his father. I love that line. As then we hear Gordon talking about the kids from the, and I quote, mental retardation center in attendance here this week. Boy, we have come a long way in the way we reference things here in this world, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. But, even at that time, it was not front and center. It just kind of like skated right through. If you weren't paying attention, you weren't really catching that line. But you can't say that today.
No, it's definitely the words have changed over time, certainly. And he caught me off guard because he mentions how a lot of the times they'll have the Boy Scouts and things of that nature. So I thought it was really cool that they did something like that for kids, of any nature. If there's sick kids from the hospital, anything like that, whenever they pull something like that out of their hat, that's pretty cool of the Georgia company. But the action goes. Brad Armstrong, Rick Benefield in here. Brad with a nice drop kick early on. Benefield manages a monkey flip late in the match, but Brad quick to take back over, landing a power slam. Match goes 3 minutes, 7 seconds there. Brad getting in one with the power slam. That's 2 weeks in a row he's done that. It's kind of an interesting finisher for a guy Brad's size.
Yeah, well, you know what? Brad's still pretty green right now.
He's figuring it out.
They're probably giving him all different kind of things, to work with. I mean, after all, Piper during the match even called him a tough little fellow.
Yeah, Piper seems to want to put over Brad on the commentary. He's not really attacking Brad so much as Father Bob, but that might change. We'll have to stay tuned and see what happens with that. Up next on the show, Gordon Solie going to interview Randy Tyree, the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee. So I had to do a little digging, figure him out. Served there as mayor 1976 to 1983 and still alive today, Jamie, 85 years old, which makes him my age here, 45-ish here in 1982. And boy, that's a rough looking 45.
Well, a lot of television people, even though he was technically a
politician.
He was a mayor, but
Sure.
if you go back and look at 70s television, guys like Red Fox and Carl O'Connor were only in their 40s.
Right.
And you looked at those shows, and even me as a little kid, I thought those guys were like 60 or 70 at the time. So a lot of people, even in every common day life, looked a lot older than they were back then. People just aged more.
Yeah, he looks every bit of 60 here, but apparently my age. It just blew my mind when I went and looked this up. And those are excellent analogies, Carol O'Connor and Red Fox, because those were guys I looked up years ago, way back at the inception of Google and things of that nature, and got all the information because I was big on those shows. And I said, oh my God, they were only in their 40s when they were portraying these characters who I thought were 60, at the time. But, obviously that wouldn't have made sense in both of their situations. But yeah, you're absolutely right here. But this guy, totally white-haired and just, I don't know, it blew my mind. So with Randy Tyree, apparently the first of mayors from Knoxville to be part of professional wrestling, but not the last. Of course, Kane going to pop up many years later now. Clearly, though, this is going to get the Knoxville territory some perks. You have to think Ron Fuller played a little string in this one, getting the mayor on national TV to promote the World's Fair coming to Knoxville.
Yeah, I was going to say, Fuller was probably, let's say, this is 1982, and the guy was still in office in 76, so what? He sells off Knoxville in 79. So him and this guy were probably buddies dating back to 76. So he gets on TBS and is able to parlay him a little shot for the World's Fair that's upcoming, because Fuller's gone from Knoxville by this point. He's basically only promoting down in Alabama.
Well, that's a good call. Very good call. And moved on. All right, we're going to continue. We're going to move on as well. We go off, as promised, Gary Hart and Great Kabuki cutting an interview here in the demonstration Dragon Shai coming up. We saw a little bit of it a week or two ago. We're going to see it again this week. Gary Hart explaining the demonstration to Gordon Solie, then entering the ring with his Kabuki. Hart with the kendo stick, Kabuki wearing those guarded metal mesh gloves that they showed us a week or so back. Gary takes about a dozen different swings with the cane at Kabuki, and Kabuki blocking every one of them with his gloves. Gary unable to strike Kabuki on the body, showing that, well, Kabuki is the master of the Dragon Shai, unable to be hit as long as he has those guarded gloves on. But we're not done yet with the segment, guys. Gary Hart then brings out youngster and future fantastic Tommy Rogers to continue this sparring contest. Gary offering Tommy $200 if he can strike Kabuki with the kendo stick anywhere but on his hands. And boy, does Tommy come out swinging. I was shocked. Comes out swinging. I wrote, wow. Takes well over a dozen quick shots and finally lands a shot over Kabuki's shoulder, strikes him right on the shoulder blade. And maybe two shots he got in there, but unbelievable. He's done it. I wrote, wow, didn't see that coming. And apparently neither did Kabuki. Kabuki immediately gets pissed off and pulls out his fucking size. I wrote, holy shit. He uses his size to block a kendo shot and then lands a side thrust kick into the chest of Tommy Rogers, taking him down to the mat, stepping over top of him and drawing his size. Apparently planning to murder Tommy Rich right here on TBS. But Gary Hart rushing in, yanking the size away from Kabuki. But that's okay, because Kabuki then picks up the kendo stick and begins whacking Tommy with that instead. I'm sure Tommy preferred the kendo over the size here, but Gary trying to grab Kabuki, pull him back, but gets knocked down himself. The manager knocked down, and Kabuki looks to be going after Gary Hart. But finally, Tommy Rogers helped outside of the ring, and Gary going to settle Kabuki down. Kind of a fun segment overall.
Yeah, this was a great segment. As I've always said, I'm not a Gary Hart or a Great Kabuki fan, but they really put this Dragon Shai thing over very well, complete with Gary Hart taking a bump. Now, the only reason Tommy Rogers got the shot in there was, for some reason, Kabuki looked over at Roddy Piper and Gordon Solie doing the announcing, which I still haven't figured out quite why he looked over. And that's when Tommy Rogers got those 2 shots in there.
It makes you wonder, was he supposed to? Was he not? I feel like Tommy's been in the business not too long, but long enough to realize that if I'm not supposed to do this, I shouldn't be doing it. But yeah, he gets a couple whacks in. Kabuki takes him down. Obviously, they had it planned. Gary Hart rushes in to calm Kabuki down, who's lost control of himself, because I think they wanted to show, even though it kind of hurt Kabuki up front, for me, I was like, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to be the master of this. How's he letting a Tommy Rogers get a shot in? But it shows you that if Tommy can do it, man, what can Dusty possibly do to Kabuki? So you feel like there's more of a shot, and you kind of see what might happen. So even though when it first happened, on first watch, I go, I don't know if I would have done that. After I had a time to think about it, I thought it was a clever idea.
Yeah, like I said, I love the thing, and they had the kind of excuse in there with him just peeking over. I mean, if you get a chance, right, watch that over again. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Kabuki looks over, and that's when Rogers gets those 2 shots in. I mean, I don't think he was supposed to get those shots in maybe right then.
Well, I tell you what, too, Tommy came in swinging. He wasn't taking those kayfabe shots. I'm not saying he was swinging for the fences to hit Kabuki. I'm saying he was moving fast and all over the place with that stick. So Kabuki actually had to work to block those versus Gary Hart's more mundane, typical kendo strikes.
Because, if Dusty was around, there would be no way he's getting those shots in, because only Dusty should be the one that actually gets a hit.
That's right, baby. We're going to talk about Dusty here before this episode's over, that's for sure. Post-segment, Gary Hart goes back over to Gordon and says he didn't see Tommy Rogers hit any part of Kabuki outside of his hands. And Roddy Piper agrees, neither did I. But Gordon swears to it. And thus Gary takes his word and hands Gordon Soley $200 to give to Tommy Rogers. Gordon stating that he'll do it after the show. I wrote, I don't know, Tommy, I'd go get my money now, because if the bars are open late, who knows where Gordon could be with your money. But
well, first round was on Tommy Rogers. You know that.
Yeah, that could have been. I totally buy that. As we continue on with the show, we get some interviews here. Superstar, Super Destroyer talking February 28th, the Omni, the World Tag Title Tournament, the Atlanta leg coming to Georgia. Super Destroyer even has a score to settle with Ron Fuller in there. They're going to be facing the opening round of that tournament. Super D, Superstar versus Fuller and Leroy Brown. Remember, it was last time out in the Omni, these two teams met up. And Fuller was the one took the mask off of the Super D, and now he's looking for revenge as they run down some arena cards coming to a city near you. We roll on back to the ring. Hey, Tom Prichard going to make TBS TV, taking on Golden Boy Chick Donovan, still here. Basic fundamentals from both guys on the ground. Quality groundwork and arm lock takeovers by Dr. Tom here. Shortcuts from the Golden Boy, keeps the match competitive though. Prichard going to counter a gorilla press attempt, a very confusing and convoluted one, but going to slide down into a backslide, but it is a wonky landing, and that breaks up the count. So instead, Tom going to walk up the side of Chick with an assisted Enziguri, going to give Prichard the win, 5 minutes, 18 seconds. Few takeaways here. It was fun, obviously fun TV match. Chick Donovan's still here. I'm happy for that, but good to see Tom Prichard here after his run in L.A.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I totally forgot Prichard arrives this early in Georgia, because I know he's back later in the year because he feuds with Ivan Koloff a little bit, but I forgot all about him being here this early. But yeah, nice little match. Anytime you're going up against Chick Donovan, even if you're not the best worker, you're going to be helped.
Yeah, and it was good for what it was. Tom Prichard's still green to the business, but he was thrusted right into the limelight, I guess you could call it, maybe, in Los Angeles as one of the upper tier level workers there. You know, he's told the story about breaking into the business, being sent to Portland, but he had a stop off in LA on the way to Portland, and the LaBelles, maybe, you know, Tom Ernesto, whomever was booking at the time, a lot of people involved in it, but maybe somebody, you know, kind of conned him into staying by telling him, well, they don't need you in Portland anymore, Tom. You got to stay here, because they wanted to keep him. And Tom, being so green as grass, didn't call Don Owen confirm, didn't even call Paul Bosch to confirm. He just stayed in LA. By the time he found out, he said, well, the money wasn't great, but I love the beaches, I love the weather, I love the ladies, and so I stuck around for a year.
Yeah, well, it was Paul Bosch has sent him there to begin with, correct?
Right, yes. And so Dr. Tom has arrived in Georgia now, a year later, got a year or so under his belt at this point in time, and didn't look too shabby in there. He was one of those guys that were maybe not the most natural ever to see in the ring, but certainly he's already got it figured out. As we continue on, Leroy Brown coming out for an interview, putting over his partner, Ron Fuller, as the time is coming. They will be taking on Superstar Super D once again at the Omni. This time the masks might come off for good, says Leroy Brown, and real soon. So basically selling that they plan to unmask both men at the Omni.
Wouldn't it have helped? We've discussed this before. If Ole would use some kind of highlights from the Omni.
Thank you.
Even just a 10-second clip of the mask, just as the mask gets ripped off. That's all you had to do. You don't have to show the whole match on television. But if you're going to say he took the mask off, let's let everybody see it.
Yeah, we've talked about that since Ole took back over. It's been few and far between the clips from the Omni, which is unfortunate because it really helped tell the story before. And I get, your logic is maybe don't show these things so that more people will come to the Omni. Why do they want to come to the Omni if they can watch it on the TV? I'm not really sure if that's the logic or not. I can kind of see some of the bookers thinking that way, but I thought it really helped tell the story in the past to bring it because it's a constant story. You're constantly telling the story. So in order to get to point B, you got to tell point A. And that would have been, you're right. It would have been great to have shown us the unmasking so that we kind of get an idea. And we look forward to seeing it happen again. But
I guess Ole wanted to pay talent and not pay so much to have an extra videotape.
Right. Well, that certainly has a lot to do with it, I'm sure. Ole saving a few bucks here in 1982. But we continue on. We talked about the Tennessee stud there, Ron Fuller unmasking the Super D. So we go from one stud to another. We're off to a VTR from Charlotte, North Carolina, Jim Crockett Promotions, and Ken Conrad interviewing Big John Studd, who says there's nobody bigger than the Stud. That's John Studd. Not Blackjack Mulligan, not Crusher Blackwell, not even Andre the Giant. He talks about the Tennessee Stud. No, he says there's only one stud in professional wrestling, and only one thing comes from Tennessee: hillbillies and rednecks. I believe that's two things, John, but who's counting?
Yeah, I've got my fingers up, too, counting that. That does count, too. Now, how'd you find out that was Ken Conrad? Because I asked around the internet a little bit. Nobody knew who that guy was. And I even went to a couple of Mid-Atlantic experts, and they had no idea who he was.
I did digging way back when I was doing some Mid-Atlantic research. This has been several years ago now.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of the guy.
I believe he was only there for about 4 months. He was a guy out of Charlotte, I'm not sure if he was a weather guy, a news guy, something to do with the channel there or whatnot. And he was a local, I don't want to say celebrity, but a local TV guy, right? So they used him for a few months there, and then off he went. King Conrad was the guy's name. And I think on Mid-Atlantic Gateway, they might have covered that once upon a time as well. So it might be worth digging up anybody out there. But we'll continue on. We'll move on. So John Studd kind of teasing he's headed into Georgia, maybe to come after the Tennessee Stud. Says there's only one stud in wrestling, and it's Big John with 2 Ds, guys. We continue on. Roddy Piper going to interview the returning GINO Hernandez. I have a bone to pick with you, Jamie. You led me to believe that GINO was only going to be here for a week, but we get him for 2.
And I will take the total hit on that one. I have figured out now, after watching this episode, remember I said I don't remember Tom Prichard being here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bet I missed this episode.
Okay.
Thus, I just had in my mind that GINO was only there for the 1 week. Yeah, because when I saw it, I immediately said, you know what, I had to have missed this because I would have remembered GINO coming back for a second time, and I wouldn't have gone over the top like I did, last week. But still, just seeing these two guys back together again, the modern-day Luthez.
That's it. Roddy Piper referring to GINO this week as the modern-day version of Luthez, and you got to love it. So in this instance, Jamie, I'm going to let you slide because I'm a happy guy right now to see GINO back on my TV. The handsome half-breed has returned for the second week in a row, as he says a young lady fan presented GINO with a towel on his way to the studio with the initials embroidered on said towel, but the initials didn't read GH. They read TR. And that's because this lady thought a TR was the most handsomest man in the world, not you, Tom Robinson, until she got a look at GINO Hernandez last week. But the classy guy that GINO is, he can't accept a gift that wasn't his. So it's kind of funny here, having fun showing off the embroidered towel of apparently originally meant for Tommy Rich or Tom Robinson, take your pick. And but GINO was gifted the towel, but he can't take, classy guy. I can't take something that wasn't meant for me.
He'd probably only wipe his butt with it anyway.
Well, he may still have at that point. I don't know.
But what a feud that could have been. I mean, because it seems like it was setting up for GINO to take that national title away from Tommy Rich instead of maybe the person that winds up taking the title away from Tommy Rich. That was probably a plan B.
Well, Paul Bosch did a lot of wheeling and dealing for GINO, as people know, to get him in. Not that GINO didn't deserve the spot once he got there, but in order to get his foot in the door, Paul Bosch from the beginning, GINO, 19 years old, the youngest guy at that time, Gaijin, to go over to Japan back in the late 1970s. So he accomplished a lot in a small amount of time. And by 1982, he'd already done quite a few things for a guy his age. And now he's here in Georgia. I could see that. It almost feels like they were setting something up, and then it just goes away, like you said, which is really unfortunate. I don't know that feud was going to work anywhere else other than in Georgia because of how over Tommy was here. But man, that would have been something else in this particular territory.
Yeah, because Tommy never really did too well outside of Georgia.
Right.
Back in
Memphis.
this time frame.
Right.
Well, besides Memphis, he was a regular there.
Yeah.
But like when he did his guest shots in Mid-Atlantic or Houston or, Mid-South, yes, he was over, but he wasn't over as much as the top guy on Georgia Championship Wrestling should have been over, since he was on national television every week.
Well, we get GINO here talking with the Hot Rod, and then we get a dose of GINO Hernandez in the ring, taking on the returning Bobby Garrett. We have not seen him since that arm injury last fall, taking on Ric Flair right here in the TV studio. And a little heavier, a little pudgier in the midsection is Garrett upon his return. Maybe a little ring rust here as well. Maybe somebody forgot to tell GINO that Garrett usually gets a little offense in, but Hernandez dominates here, finishing Bobby Garrett off with the top rope diving back elbow. And it's not a thing of beauty. I mean, he doesn't fly with it or anything, but that's a dangerous move because GINO really doesn't have an idea where he's going to land.
No, that's like the old Mr. Fuji kamikaze dive.
Yes, it's like, I'm going to land where I land. Just tuck your arms in and pray, I guess. GINO landing here. It could have been injured Bobby Garrett's arm all over again, but alas, GINO scoring the win, and Bobby Garrett is back on our TV screens. Match went 2 minutes, 14 seconds.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Jimmy Garvin in the ring taking on Rick Harris, the future Black Bart. Garvin appears to be off the cycle now, and the stockier 280-pound Rick Harris actually gets in some offense this week. Actually, pretty much all of the offense here on Jimmy Garvin does Rick Harris get, until Garvin counters a backdrop attempt into a backslide for the win. Match goes 4 minutes, 4 seconds. Couple takeaways from this match. Ricky Harris given most of the match, and Garvin using a backslide to win rather than that forearm finisher he's been using. So looks like Rick Harris might be moving up the card just a little.
Yes, moving up the card, or they're prepping Mr. Harris to maybe move on to greener pastures pretty soon. Because he's had a good run. He's been here since around November. So it's almost time for him to move on.
Yeah, and I know he will wind up in Mid-South Wrestling before too long, if I remember correctly. We're going to continue on. Got a couple interviews here. Bob and Brad Armstrong coming out, plugging the Omni tournament. Of course, they're going to be one of the 10 teams involved. I'm not sure how many teams. We'll see when we get there. Tommy Rich out here talks about the new Northern Tours as they're going to start coming to, I can't really do it like Tommy does it, but Ohio in Michigan and West Virginia, all the pretty ladies up there in the North. So the full weeks of the North Tours are on the way. They're actually going to be here before too long in March. So going to be going across Ohio, up into Michigan, all the way back across to West Virginia. and then back down to Georgia for the following week. So it begins, Jamie.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. Are they just going to do the one tour, or are they going to do the Northern Tour and still run the state of Georgia at the same time as we go forward?
Yeah, we'll see what kind of success they have up there as well. Is this going to be a long-term thing? A lot of people that know the history know that it will, and we'll see them actually expand even more into more cities across those states. But right now, we go back to the ring for Ole Anderson and his brand new tag team partner, Stan the Lariat Hansen. Their opponents, Jim Gallagher and Ed Timms. As Gordon on commentary during this matchup promising us that next week the Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta will be here. More on that. Quick tags in the matchup here. Quite the mauling, as you'd expect. Gordon taking the opportunity to explain why we see so many wrestlers work the left body parts. Because, well, they're seen as the weaker limbs on the average person. So I thought that made sense. I'd always wondered how they got away with always working the left side of the bodies, and nobody would ever call it to question, and here's Gordon explaining it away. So Gordon joining Bill Watts is a great explainer in this particular matchup, but it doesn't really matter what side of the body you work because the Lariat going to get it done here on Gallagher. Match goes 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, that's why Gordon is the dean of announcers.
I'll give it to you.
But did you notice in this match, and Piper actually brings it up, Ole being the fine booker that he is at this point,
okay,
he has Hansen working Anderson style and working over parts of the body.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's flawless that, he might have lost Gene, but Hansen's actually a younger version of Gene and probably more powerful.
Probably more, I would say absolutely
well,
more
definitely more powerful.
Well, after the big win, we hear from the two men, Ole and Stan Hansen, cutting a promo here. Why did Hansen join Ole Anderson? Because money talks. $25,000 for every tournament win. Well, they could be the greatest tag team the world has ever seen. Stan Hansen owes no explanation to anyone, he says. They will be the World Tag Team Champions and piss on the fans who don't like it. Hansen and Ole Anderson, man, what a tough, rugged, dangerous tag team coming to the Omni, just one of the many teams involved in the big tournament.
Yeah, I was so disappointed seeing Hansen turn heel because, I saw him in the WWF as a heel, but I was enjoying each time that he was coming back to Georgia over the last 14 months, seeing a different kind of Stan Hansen, seeing that face. So I wasn't real happy with him going back to being a heel here.
Well, money talks, like they say, and we'll see if that works all the way to the finals and beyond in this tag team tournament. Of course, Atlanta just one of the legs, supposedly, in this gigantic world-renowned World Tag Title Tournament. As that concludes hour number one, we move into hour number two now. Gordon promising us more of GINO HERNANDEZ, plus Kelly Kiniski here, son of the legendary Gene Kiniski. So we'll be talking about him in just a little bit. But right now, Ron Bass and Buzz Sawyer are going to stop by to talk with Gordon. Sawyer talking trash on one wildfire Tommy Rich, who happens to be stepping at the ring at this very moment. And Buzz stating that he's already battled Rich. Then he turns his attention to looking for a new opponent to wrestle here on Channel 17. Ron Bass says he doesn't like people who stick their nose in his business. And that includes the guy in the ring right now, Tommy Rich. And people are going to pay.
And Tommy Rich will pay, just not today or tomorrow.
Well, someday, and maybe for the rest of his life. But right now, we see the wildfire Tommy Rich in the ring taking on Ricky Harris, who didn't look too bad earlier against Jimmy Garvin. We're going to see how he looks here in hour number two. Scrappy McGowan, the referee now for this program. Let's see how he fares against Mr. Georgia, this Harris character. Piper crediting Harris, comparing him to Wilhelm Ruska, the former judo champion back in 1972, the Olympics, when taking a breather to regroup. He says that it was Ruska who took a breather, who was given a breather in the judo matches back at the Olympics, and it allowed him to win the gold medal. And so he doesn't fault Ricky. It's funny how Roddy Piper just pulls this stuff out of his ass sometimes. It's like something he just found out today, and then he utilizes it on TV.
Oh, that's what made Piper so great. He could or it's something that's been hidden in the back of his mind for years.
Yes.
Just waiting for that moment to use it, and this was it.
Roddy pointing out that the record books will never say that you took a break. They'll just say you won. Amen, Hot Rod. And the regrouping does slow things down here. Harris going to take over momentarily. Tommy Rich, though, surprising Rick coming off the ropes with a Thez press, and he's going to score the win 452. Was there ever any doubt? So the Wildfire picking up a victory here, the national heavyweight champion, still on top, As the action continues on, we also see Ron Bass climb into the ring to take on Jim Gallagher, as it's total dominance here by the Outlaw, bruising style, toying with Gallagher, it would seem. This match goes on, feels like forever, pulling Jim up from several covers, and we saw Bass do that recently and get disqualified for it. It seemed like he did it even more in this match than he did in the last match, but he clearly hasn't learned his lesson. However, this time, it is the Texas Stampede, the Power Slam, going to give Bass the pinfall victory in 446. So Tommy Rich and Ron Bass back-to-back matches. I don't think that was done by accident.
No, not at all. And you know what? Ole probably didn't get any reaction to that losing streak stopping by disqualification and lifting up. So he probably just said, to hell with it, just keep lifting guys up and we'll forget that ever happened.
So, yeah, obviously you're talking about that. Now, we've seen Bass lose on a couple house shows, but if it doesn't happen on TV, you don't have to sell it as such. But Ron Bass...
I thought it did a couple weeks ago. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ray. But
no, you're good.
I thought he lost on television the other week.
He
by
did.
DQ.
By TV,
oh,
yes.
okay, he did.
Yes.
All right. Gotcha.
No, we go on. Ron Bass obviously coming for Tommy Rich, coming for that champion. You kind of wish it was GINO HERNANDEZ now, certainly, rather than the Outlaw, but it is what it is. Ron Bass looking good there, and they put him back-to-back to keep the fans kind of remembering that these two guys in the same wavelength. As we continue on, another promo from the Armstrongs, more from Tommy Rich, a lot of talk about the upcoming shows in Ohio, Michigan, West Virginia, the big expansion up into the north. Carrollton, Georgia tonight. We'll have results on that in a little bit, but the Northern Tour begins March the 8th. So again, I say it begins, and looking forward to seeing what they do up there. Hopefully I can get a few numbers from a couple of those cities. But we're going to go back to the ring right now. Going to see Jimmy Garvin battle Buzz Sawyer. And so Buzz was looking for some competition here on Channel 17, and he's going to get it in the form of Jimmy Garvin. Quick mat wrestling ride, and Buzz going to lose grip on the back of Garvin, falling out of the ring. Humiliated and mad, Buzz going to drop the straps on his wrestling tunic. I always called it a singlet, but Gordon Sully referring to it as a tunic here. I don't know that I've ever heard that before, but knowing Gordon, that was probably the proper name for it once upon a time.
Either that or Gordon just... much like me, forgot the name singlet and just used tunic instead.
Well, Garvin with a near fall inside cradle, backslide, going to send Sawyer powdering to the floor again to regroup. Frustration clearly setting in for the Mad Dog as Garvin gets him back in the ring, working a side headlock on the mat here. Finally, though, Ron Bass comes ringside, distracting Garvin by encouraging Buzz Sawyer, who takes over the control here. Buzz going to land a knee drop and smile with confidence now into the camera. A cocky Sawyer, though, scooping Garvin up with a vertical suplex, but Garvin slipping behind into a schoolboy roll-up, gets the 1, 2, 3. And Jimmy Garvin pinning Buzz Sawyer here. Match goes 5 minutes, 56 seconds, but immediately afterwards, Ron Bass jumping into the ring, attacking Garvin. Double team begins from there. Bass going to hold Garvin down, Buzz to the top rope, delivering a flying knee or something like that. As somebody comes in, I think you might have caught who it was, Jamie. Somebody comes in trying to make the save, gets dumped out of the ring on their frickin' head before Brad Armstrong and Tom Prichard out to make the actual save.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know who that was. I didn't make a note on who tried to make the save, but this whole thing was great. Yes, they did have things like this on Georgia television, but not to this level and intensity at this time, in February. This was just outstanding.
No, it was totally good stuff. Gordon even pointing out that Garvin is bleeding, perhaps a broken nose here during the match, and against Buzz Sawyer, I would highly believe that. But it's kind of interesting seeing Buzz come off the top rope, because I thought the first time I saw this, it was just an accident, and clearly not. I'm not sure what move this is supposed to be Sawyer's doing, because I've seen him do it as a finisher, at least once before in recent weeks. He comes off the top and kind of falls short of the guy, almost lands in a squatting position, and I presume it's supposed to be. Now, we know he's going to master the Mad Dog Splash down the line, but right now, whatever he's doing up there, he needs to find a new move.
Yeah, what I do have noted is just how agile he was back here. He was up there ready for that leap within moments.
Yeah.
Not Jimmy Snuka fast, but he was up there pretty quick. I mean, Buzz Sawyer could really go back then. And even up to the end, the guy could still go when he had his head on properly.
I don't know that he ever had his head on properly, but yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. When he wasn't taking the extra.
I don't know that happened either.
The extra additives before they started recording.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'd say this much for Buzz Sawyer. Between his amateur background and, being one of the best, he only lost, the Nationals to Dan Severn. You don't have any. Dan Severn went on to win the whole thing. I think he beat Buzz in the semis. So, that's a pretty big deal to make it that far. That's no slouch. And then to say, well, I lost to Dan Severn. Okay, well, most people would. But Buzz Sawyer, man, he's just a different animal, not just as an amateur wrestler, very destructive, very aggressive, very nasty. But then you talk about that entire other, side of the agility he has, the ability, those leapfrogs where he gets 7 feet in the air, those top rope leaps, and just everything he was doing. He's probably the most dangerous guy in the business for a long period of time, inside and outside of the ring. Unfortunately, I would think his stature mixed with his, his issues certainly played a lot into him not being a much bigger star than he was. And he was big here for a while.
And we were talking about the Knoxville mayor looking, so old.
Sure.
I'll bet everybody, including myself, probably assume, Buzz is probably in his 30s at this point. But I believe he's only like 22, 23, if that.
Well, he passes away at around 33, 34, I think, maybe 32. I'm not sure. So, yeah, that would totally put him in position to be in his early 20s. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he goes with that scenario. And the other thing, similar to the Freebirds, how young they were.
Yes. Yeah. There was a lot of guys.
A lot of young guys that were on top.
They just had it. They had it figured out. We talk about Brad Armstrong looking great, but his father was a wrestler. Gordy had it from the beginning as a youngster. Michael Hayes maybe never excelled as a professional wrestler, but he was amazing as a showman and a hell of a promo. So all of these guys that we're talking about, at a very young age, teenagers, were already either selling out or working their way up the cards. And Buzz Sawyer's another one. You can see Ole took an affectionate turn, some kind of a father figure. I'm not sure what was going on there. Bob Roop isn't even sure what was going on there that entire time, but it's something there between Ole and Buzz. No matter what Buzz did, he kept his job and kept getting pushed. As we will see, it's going to continue him up the card. But Tommy Rich back in the studio now says he's sick of this double teaming. Jimmy Garvin, a good friend of his. They go way back. He says anytime, any place, Tommy Rich calling out Ron Bass and Buzz Sawyer on behalf of himself and Jimmy Garvin. Brother, so Tommy Rich getting involved in this sort of calling out Sawyer, which we will see Tommy step in the ring with eventually once again, and of course Ron Bass. So Tommy getting involved, looking out for his friend Jim Garvin. Yeah,
because one thing that they have been building up since early January is that the two of those guys are good friends. So it's just logical that he'll come out and help Garvin when Garvin needs help and vice versa.
Well, we're going to get our first look now at Kelly Kiniski taking on Bobby Garrett back for hour number 2. Son of Big Thunder, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Gene Kiniski. Kelly moving pretty quick here in this matchup, working as a babyface, which you don't see a whole lot there from Kelly. Bobby Garrett grabs the ropes to dodge a Kiniski dropkick, though, going to put on the brakes, but he's going to run into the Kiniski backbreaker finisher, going to give Kelly the win, 2 minutes, 18 seconds. Never really thought a whole lot about Kelly. He didn't look like a whole lot. He was never as good as his father, obviously. No offense. I thought Nick had a great look, Nick Kiniski, but the stories always go, Kelly was the one that had the desire to follow in his father's footsteps. Nick, not so much. And Nick was given all the attributes. He had the look, he had the blonde hair, he had the body, and he was pretty much a natural in the ring to some degree. And Kelly here, he was decent, but he was never going to reach that level that Gene Kiniski did, obviously.
No, and they pushed Kelly more along the lines of an amateur wrestler his whole career. Because he wore that singlet a lot, and he was just bland. He just never really got over. I don't think I saw this show because I have no recollection of Kelly Kiniski ever coming through.
Well, he was there right at the beginning of 1986, the Cowboy UWF, when Masked Superstar Bill Eadie, the original, the real one, went over to work a tour of Japan. They brought Kelly Kiniski in to work under the hood as the superstar while he was gone. And when he came back, all of a sudden there were 2 superstars. And I know Bill Eadie was not happy with that long term. And so he had Kiniski, I believe. I don't remember now. Roman might remember out there, but it's been quite a while, because it was so early in the UWF stories we were telling. But Eadie had it fixed to where Kiniski would be unmasked, or they would split up. I'm not sure what happened. And then Eadie winds up leaving directly after. But before he left, he wanted to make sure that everybody knew this other guy was not the superstar.
Well, I can see that.
Right now, we will continue on. Roddy Piper back out here to interview GINO HERNANDEZ once again. GINO was apparently scheduled to wrestle here in hour number 2, but he's been more than generous with his ring work already, so he's dressed for another night on the town, and I love the way GINO enters. I actually took a couple pictures, clips of this one. As Roddy and Gordon are talking, GINO just kind of strolls in front of them and stops and stares at the camera. Again, you go back, just this guy had it. He understood what it was, and he had it. If you want to see the handsome half-breed's body, he says, you're going to have to pay your hard-earned money. Come on down to the matches, as he tells Tommy Rich to start sweating.
Yeah, much like we never got to see Kevin Von Erich again, we never get to see GINO again, and it's just another example of what could have been.
Yeah, I mean, you just talk about fantasy booking, everything you could have done with GINO HERNANDEZ here on the national scale. It could have been something really good.
Plus, you would have had Piper and GINO fall apart eventually.
Yeah, as seems to happen with everybody with GINO. But that's, again, another story, another day. It might be on Regional Rasslin Unreal, before too long.
Hey, there we go.
But
one of my favorite programs.
Yeah, mine too. But so yeah, GINO HERNANDEZ still here for hour number 2. It was nice to see him again. I don't know that we're ever going to see him again here in Georgia. I don't believe so. Pretty positive this time. Pretty confident GINO HERNANDEZ is done here on TBS. But we continue on with the program. Kevin Sullivan out for an interview, as he says very few can succeed at 2 sports, but Kevin Sullivan has now done it in 3: weightlifting, bodybuilding, and professional wrestling. And I might argue that none of those are sports, Jamie. Maybe weightlifting. I guess it requires some sort of workout, sport competitiveness. But bodybuilding, a sport? Again, I guess some bodybuilders out there, if they're listening, probably aren't happy with me right now. And, well, we all know pro wrestling isn't exactly on the level. But I just thought Kevin was really reaching here. But he's putting himself over. And he's glad Jimmy Garvin got what he deserved earlier. As he calls out Tommy Rich, the Armstrongs, Jimmy Garvin. He calls them the Beaver Cleaver family, of course, Beaver, Wally, and company.
Yeah, and again, Garvin and Sullivan have known each other for years. So they're just, my old expression, chopping at the bit probably to work with each other again here.
Yeah, it's always nice when you see guys work, that have worked together so many different times in the past in different territories. They know each other. They know what they can, they can do with each other out there. And the matches are always good. And Kevin Sullivan is now kind of putting himself into that storyline with Buzz Sawyer, Ron Bass, and, of course, the baby faces on top. We're going to see Kevin in the ring here taking on a guy I'm not familiar with. First time I've ever seen Alan Tupperella, complete control.
I had no idea who he was either.
Yeah, never heard of the fella, but that's okay because he doesn't last too long. Well, he lasts a fair amount of time, but I think that's because Kevin allowed it. Complete control here by the Boston Battler. Going to see the double stomp put Tupperella away, 4 minutes, 50 seconds. Sullivan looking good out there, still in great shape. We also, at this point, hear once again from Gary Hart, the great Kabuki, again discussing the Dragon Shai match, upcoming Kabuki versus Dusty Rhodes at the Omni, February 28th. No disqualification, kendo stick going to be in the ring, but not only bringing the kendo stick, Gary Hart alluding that we might be bringing the green fog, that mysterious green mist, as Kabuki sprays it in the air to kind of remind everybody what he can do.
You know what? I think we talked about this before, too. I didn't find out till years later how they did that green mist spot.
Yeah.
And it really surprised me that somebody could wrestle that whole match with a condom in their mouth full of green food coloring and not have it pop somewhere during the match. Same with the guys who used to keep the razors under their tongue. How you could do that.
Put it up in your cheek, put it in your tongue. Yeah, it's just all kinds of crazy stuff that they would do with these things. And, it was different times, man, when men were men and men were stupid. This is what I can say there. We hear from the National Tag Team Champions as well on this show. Superstar Super D back out here calling out all the teams, baby faces and heels, pointing out that they are the National Tag Team Champions. They're the team to beat in this upcoming tag title tournament. We also hear again from Buzz Sawyer, who is pissed off after losing his match with Jimmy Garvin earlier. Basically says, fuck the tag team matches. Sawyer was slated to team with Ron Bass as part of the tag team tournament, but now he's calling out Jimmy Garvin one-on-one anytime. He said what he did to Jimmy Garvin today ain't nothing. So it looks like we're going to be seeing these two go at it once again.
Yeah, and I think it's going to happen real soon.
Very soon, as Gordon Soley promoting next week that Rick Oliver will be here along with pretty boy Buddy Rose. He gets some of the words right. Roddy Piper going to quip, I'm anxious to see Buddy Rose, but he won't be so anxious to see me. I love the play on the backstory there in Portland.
And we're even going to get more of it next week when they actually do arrive.
We do indeed. I'm looking forward to seeing if you have any of that in your memory banks. I don't know how much of that I took in the notes, so I'm looking forward to seeing that when we get there here in the second half of the show. But before we can do that, we've got another match in the ring to close out this week's Georgia show. It's Brad and Bob Armstrong teaming up to take on Rick Benefield and Golden Boy Chick Donovan. And we open the show with Brad versus Benefield, and we're going to close the show with Brad versus Benefield starting this one off too. Surprisingly, the heel side, if you will, is able to get in some offense on Brad, specifically Chick Donovan. But Brad able to make it back to his corner, tag back to the Bullet. And the Armstrong is in control for a bit. Then Chick Donovan again able to take Brad back to the heel corner. Double teaming from there. But Bob has seen enough and runs in. And the referee stopping over Scrappy McGowan, going to usher Bob back to his corner. But Brad able to make the big hot tag. And in comes the Bullet, who explodes as we break down into a four-way melee and a double whip. Since the heels colliding before the Bullet with a nice simple slam and an elbow drop gets the win here over Benefield. Match goes 6 minutes and 28 seconds, the longest of the night, and obviously basically just filling out the rest of the time on the program.
And who better to have out there than Bob and Brad, two guys that are experts in the ring that can carry their opponents a little bit of a distance. Now, Benefield was one of the enhancement talent that I was never too key on, and he's around for years. He's going to wind up working Crockett when he takes over TBS also. So Benefield ain't going nowhere. No, I was going to say, well, you know why he got hired for this position? Because he showed up each and every week to do the jobs and probably didn't even get paid. Who knows? But we close out this week's edition of TV. We hear from Ole Anderson as well as Gary Hart. Ole putting over his team with Stan Hansen, says more to come as he trashes the Armstrongs after their big win here this evening, taped in the morning. Gary Hart then putting over the new team as well of Ole and Stan Hansen, says they will be the new World Tag Team Champions. Gary can feel it. In return, Ole knows that Kabuki will destroy the American dream. A little more mutual admiration there. And the look on Gordon's face as he says goodbye is just priceless. He can't believe that they're saying stuff like that. Good old Gordon. As we close out this week's edition of TV, we're going to be back for another week of house shows and television, as well as an Omni card right after this WrestleCopia timeout.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Rasslin, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering mini past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, Videocast, also now a part of Patreon. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. All right, guys, we are back to the program. Jammie Ward, you still there, brother?
I'm still here. I'm not going nowhere. We're talking about stuff that keeps me awake at night.
Oh, my gosh. We got 9 more days of results to look at here, if I'm counting right anyway. All right, we go on to February 20th, Carrollton, Georgia, the Fairgrounds. Tommy Rich and Leroy Brown in the main event over the Superstar and Super D, presuming the title's not on the line. Also on the card, Kevin Sullivan over Brad Armstrong by DQ. Tom Prichard defeating Ricky Harris. The Armstrongs teaming up over Ron Bass and Kevin Sullivan. And Jim Garvin with a double countout against Buzz Sawyer. So we see Brad and Kevin work a double duty here, I guess, to fill out the show at the Fairgrounds.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see that Garvin Sawyer double countout. You know, that had to go back to the locker room.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just coming off the TV, 2 people going out to watch the match to kind of see the rematch, if you will, right after watching the original on TV, presuming that, you know, you have cable there in Carrollton anyway. We continue on to Marietta, Georgia, February 21st, Cobb County Civic Center, Tommy Rogers over Buck Brannigan, Jerry Oates defeating Ken Timms, Jimmy Garvin over Kevin Sullivan by DQ, World Junior Champion Les Thornton comes to town, beating Ted Oates by a countout, and in the main event, Ron Bass and Buzz Sawyer defeating Ron Fuller and Big Red in Marietta. Kind of an interesting card because it's a split night. We're also up in Columbus, Ohio, same day at the Ohio Center. And here's where the A group is. Listen to this card. I thought that Marietta show sounded a little light, bringing in a couple guys they don't normally use, including the Oates brothers. But here in Columbus, Ohio, at the Ohio Center, it's Brad Armstrong over Ricky Harris, Terry Taylor penning the French Angel, Masked Superstar over Mr. Wrestling 2, plus Dusty Rhodes and Andre the Giant scoring a win over the Great Kabuki and Super Destroyer, which apparently gives Dusty 5 minutes with Gary Hart, I'm going to guess here, because the results for the next match is the American Dream over Gary Hart and national champion Tommy Rich pinning the former world champion Harley Race in the main event, talking about back to bringing the big guns to Columbus.
Oh, yeah, because we haven't seen Terry Taylor since around New Year's when he just came in for that one TV taping.
Right.
And we haven't seen Wrestling 2 since maybe early January also.
Yeah, and they talked about, you know, the entire reason for expanding in Ohio was the fan letters that stated they loved Mr. Wrestling 2. And Wrestling 2 brought back here Andre the Giant, Dusty Rhodes, Tommy Rich against Harley Race in your main event. So hell of a card there in Columbus. But we continue on. They're not done in Ohio yet. They're going to also work Dayton, Ohio, which I believe actually happened earlier in the day. Hera Arena. Some of this, obviously, same guys, the same group of guys that work Columbus. We're going to see Tom Prichard over the French Angel, Terry Taylor defeat Ricky Harris, the tag team champions, Superstar, Super Destroyer over Brad Armstrong and Mr. Wrestling 2. Good stuff there. Then Andre the Giant battling Harley Race to a double countout, and national champion Tommy Rich defeating the Great Kabuki by disqualification there in the Hera Arena. Man, the Ohio fans got some great cards there on the 21st.
Oh, especially with Andre against Race.
Yeah.
I've seen several of their matches over the years, and Andre always respected Race. It was never a squash.
No, definitely. Well, no, he was one of the, dozen or so guys that he ever let slam, Harley Race slam Andre the Right. So they've had some.
Always fought toe-to-toe there.
Right.
They've had some. It wasn't Andre dominating.
Yeah, some good matches there over in Japan and even here in the States. So very cool stuff. It kind of shocked me, but I guess they're trying to expand into Dayton, so they bring some big guns there to kind of pop the town, so to speak. We continue on the 22nd, couple of shows here. First in Huntington, West Virginia at the Fieldhouse. Tommy Rich scoring a win in a battle royal, going to close out the night, but also on the card, Terry Taylor over Ken Jugan. Didn't know Ken Jugan, up here in the Cleveland, Ohio area known as Lord Zoltan. And I believe he come out of the western side of PA, Pittsburgh area is Ken Jugan. He did a lot of jobs for the WWF as well there in the 1980s. He was always around all those outlaw promotions, the indies of West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania throughout the 80s and 90s. I saw him many a times as a teenager at the house, or at the indie shows around here. But Ken Jugan on the card kind of caught me off guard with that one. Brad Armstrong over Ricky Harris. Tom Prichard defeating the French Angel. Kabuki over Wrestling 2. Superstar and Super Destroyer defeating Dusty Rhodes and Tommy Rich. And as I said, closing out the night, Tommy Rich scoring a win in a battle royal.
Yeah, a whole 11-man battle royal.
Well, it's everybody on the cards -1. So who do you think didn't show up for the battle royal? Was it Dusty or was it Wrestling 2?
Oh, you know it was Dusty. Dusty wasn't working twice. He got his money.
I put my time in, baby. I'm out of here. See you next week. Mac and Dream, Dusty Rhodes. He didn't get if he wasn't winning the battle royal, he wasn't sticking around. That's what it was, I think.
Probably.
February 22nd, also in Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium, Tommy Rogers over the Avenger, who was subbing in for Buck Brannigan there. Jerry Oates over Ken Timms. Ted Oates beating World Junior Champion Les Thornton by DQ. Jimmy Garvin over Kevin Sullivan. And Ron Bass and Buzz Sawyer again, this time over Big Red and Leroy Brown in Augusta, which takes us to the 24th. Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium. Jerry Oates over Ricky Harris. Kevin Sullivan downing Tom Prichard. Buzz Sawyer battling Brad Armstrong to a draw. Those had to be so good. Ron Bass also draw with Jimmy Garvin. Ted Oates over Les Thornton by DQ once again. And Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong defeating Superstar Super Destroyer by disqualification.
Yeah, I'd have paid to see that match too.
Lots of good stuff on these shows, even if, not top to bottom, obviously. They're not all world-beating superstar cards, but my God, man, those shows in Ohio really impressed me that they're taking it seriously. The expansion is what I get from that.
Right, just like they did a year ago or a year and a half ago when they started running Columbus. They stacked those cards. Now, these aren't as stacked as those cards were, but they're very solid, and they're dying for pro wrestling at this point because I think the Sheik's about 2 years removed at this point, and then, Jarrett and Buddy Fuller tried to run Ohio. And
Buddy Fuller, I think Buddy Fuller more than Jarrett. Jarrett tried for a day until he realized he was getting screwed. He said, Buddy, just take it. But obviously, it
just never fully materialized.
Right. But, even Southwest tried to come up into Ohio, as a matter of fact, when they took over USA. Just didn't work out. So it was a hotbed once upon a time, and they were just trying things, and Ole succeeded for the short term anyway. As we continue on, head off to another week of TV here, February 27th. Gordon Soley and Rod Piper going to host at least hour number 1 anyway. Hot Rod interviewing Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen right out of the gate. Piper putting the duo over as Ole agrees naturally that they are the greatest team of all time. Stan Hansen says blood and kin mean nothing, referencing the Armstrongs and some of the other wrestlers around this area. He says it's about the money and just getting the job done. So matter of factly, Stan Hansen saying it doesn't matter if you're blood or not. It's all about the green.
That's all it is. They don't have to like each other. They don't have to respect each other. They just want to win.
Oh, Hansen does say that repeatedly. We're not friends. This is not a friendship. It's all about money, making money here. And man, what a rough team to step in the ring with. I hate to see who their first round opponents are when we get there. We go to the ring for the first time this week. Tom Prichard battling Mike Jackson. And it's just as good as you guys might imagine looking at the names involved. Tom looks to keep things grounded, though, but they keep finding their way back up for another takedown to the mat. Jackson countering a hip toss at one point into an arm drag mid-flight. Gotta love that. I've never seen that before. Mike does get aggressive with some forearm shivers across the jaw of Prichard at one point, maybe 2 points. Jackson with a middle rope reverse body block. Gonna score a near fall on Tom, but Prichard back with a backslide for 2. But he's going to miss a drop kick, allowing Mike Jackson to drop the big leg, brother. Going to get a 2 for himself there, does Mike. Prichard, though, right back into a 3-corner Nelson roll. Gets the win. Match goes 6 minutes, 36 seconds. It might not have been the planned finish because Mike goes into a headlock spot before he's told the match is over. I wrote, kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't think he was fully aware of what was going on there. But the Roddy Piper mention of this match is when he says, it's great to see the lighter weight fellows go at it.
Well, he ain't lying, man. But I saw the names there in the ring. I said, oh, this could be good. And it was good for what it was, obviously. And they give Prichard time to showcase him. Well, hell, they showcase Mike Jackson. You got to take this TV time very seriously. They're spending money on you. For every time we see perhaps a non-trained wrestler step in here and look the part, we get guys like Mike Jackson who are able to make it work, always having a good match out there. Kind of like Johnny Rodz up in the WWF. You sit down and watch those squash matches.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also, for those wondering, Mike Jackson is not the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion yet. It hasn't been announced. So he's just regular Mike Jackson.
I thought he was born Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion. No,
I did too, but Gordon has yet to mention it
okay.
in his run here in Georgia.
Very good. Well, Gordon hasn't been to Alabama yet. That's what it is. Wait till Gordon gets to Alabama. Well,
and Gordon will get there. He'll spend a lot of time in Birmingham.
He will. Well, we know he's a big fan of Ron Fuller, so there's no doubt Gordon on his way there. Is Dusty Rhodes going to come into town this week? Of course, he's got the big match at the Omni tomorrow night against Kabuki. And Dusty out here to talk Kabuki. And that demonstration from last week right here on TV, he hears the people out here screaming, "Give me the Hollywood, Dream." Well, here he is. Dream going to show off his shirt, which reads, "The world is filled with kings and queens who blind your eyes and steal your dreams. It's heaven and hell." Dusty says he's going to take care of business tomorrow night.
Yeah, different wording that I hadn't heard out of Dusty before.
Yeah, had it printed on a shirt. I'm proud of Big Dust there. Going to show it off for the camera, put it over, and coming for Kabuki. We're going to see more of Dusty Rhodes later on, more fun with him before these 2 hours are over. So we go to the ring. You should like this one. The French Angel, a.k.a. Frank Morel, in a squash match against a guy by the name of Ron Horn. Is Morel, Morel actually going to feed Horn some spots? How kind of him. But then it's the big comeback, landing the shoulder breaker, giving Frank Morel, the French Angel, a win here on TBS in 1982, guys. Match goes 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
Even though this is taped, I wonder if a few of the guys hadn't rolled in yet, and Ole just said,
"Get out there,
Frank, grab that kid over there and just go out there and kill a couple minutes."
Ron Horn's not a name I've heard before. It almost makes you wonder if Frank brought him, right? Like Frank was working with the kid or something and kind of got him a work here. I don't really know.
It's just a little early in their taping to have a match like this. Normally they throw this on as the last match of the first hour or the last match of the second hour. You don't usually see a match like this. Well, that's this early.
That's a good call when we were coming out of a Tom Prichard, Mike Jackson match as well. Nothing against Tom Prichard, and I'm not saying they wouldn't open the show anyway, but again, you want to open up hot, and we go to a Tom Prichard match who again, sophomore year in the business and green as grass as far as the Georgia fans are concerned. And then we go into a Frank Morel match following that so early on the show. But that's okay because these stars are now arriving. Tennessee stud Ron Fuller, Leroy Brown out here for another interview talking superstar, Super Destroyer. Fuller showing off the mask that he took from Scott Irwin last time they met. He says next time he's going to take both their masks, referring to the Omni tomorrow night. So actually we see the prop here this week. He's showing off the mask that he took from the Super Destroyer.
Right, and we should have seen that mask last week.
Had they thought of it last week.
Yeah, had they thought of it.
We go to the ring.
Well, you'd think Fuller, being a promoter, would have thought of it.
Was Fuller there last week? I don't think Ron was on the card. Was he on the show last week?
Well, then Leroy should have had it when he was out there.
Well, there you go. It is what it is. Well, Ron Fuller keeps it in his glove compartment for safekeepings, I suppose, as the Tennessee stud steps in the ring with Bobby Garrett this week. Gordon Soley trying to sell us on this new Georgia stud shit. I'm not buying Gordon, referring to Ron Fuller as the Georgia stud now because he's here. It's probably Ron's idea, I would guess. Still great mat wrestling here by the 6'9" Fuller. Leapfrog and dropkick combo. Nice knee lift and a vertical suplex. But Ron Fuller going to miss an elbow drop. Bobby Garrett trying to capitalize by mounting the back of Fuller on the mat, but the long-legged stud wrapping his legs around Bobby's body, hooking him back into kind of a half Nelson roll-up. Gets the pin. Match goes 3.5 minutes. Ron Fuller, man, I mean, I'm telling you, a hell of a talent. It's even here in 1982. Everything he does for a guy his size, he shouldn't be doing. He doesn't need to do, but he's pointing out that, yeah, I can do leapfrogs and drop kicks. I can also mat wrestle these guys into a pretzel here. So very impressive. Ron Fuller in the ring.
Almost a different finisher every time Fuller wrestles. And And just the way he could throw a drop kick in that ring, showing you how small that is.
Yeah.
I mean, if he threw a drop kick and put his right or left hand on the top rope, I bet his foot could almost touch the other side.
Well, yeah, you have to think that what is that ring? Couldn't be more than 14 feet here in the studio, so it's close. Yeah, close. I tell you what, if he ever gets trapped in a figure four, he should be able to find his way to the ropes without much trouble.
He wouldn't have a problem. That's probably why they never did Flair Fuller on Georgia TV.
Well, speaking of the Nature Boy, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair out here next for an interview talking about tomorrow night, the big main event, Ric Flair versus 6 times former World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race. Flair says he's beat them all, the Funks, the Briscos, Dusty Rhodes, and now that just leaves Harley. Harley Race and Ric Flair, just one of the many matches coming tomorrow night.
Kind of makes you think, how come they didn't have a Flair-Harley match before this?
I don't know. I don't know if the stars aligned properly or whatever the booking may have been. I'm not sure the situation on that, but I do like how no matter who Flair's working, he basically says, I beat everybody but this guy, even though he's beat this guy as well in the past. But
right.
the point I think that they're making here is Flair's never beaten Harley Race for the world title, and at least not in Georgia rings, at least not at the Omni. We haven't seen Flair go over on Harley Race at this point. So it's a big match coming to town on top of the big tag title tournament and everything else that goes along with it, which we will get into here before the end of this program. As Georgia Championship Wrestling is on tour. And I guess Freddie Miller gets the week off here because Gordon Soley doing the voiceover work. As we hear from the Armstrongs once again talking about the big tournament and that big tour up north coming very soon. And then, well, it is the TBS debut, maybe, of Rick Oliver and Playboy Buddy Rose. Not Pretty Boy Buddy Rose, as Gordon said last week, but it is Ripper Rick Oliver. He's going by Rick here.
Gordon called him the Ripper Oliver.
Right, Ripper Rick Oliver.
The Ripper.
Okay.
Oliver. He didn't even use Rick. He just went the Ripper Oliver.
And basically, he did use the name Rick in a couple of the other territories. He was mostly Rip in Portland. I know he worked as Rip. Did he work as Rip in World Class with Cornette? I can't remember.
Yes, I believe he was Rip there.
Okay. But I know he was also Rick Oliver in certain territories as well. So it's not far-fetched. Even Buddy Rose calling him Rick Oliver, in fact, here in the interviews. But Buddy says the LA Dodgers, the San Francisco 49ers, and now Buddy Rose and Rick Oliver, another West Coast championship team coming your way. So basically selling it as a big-time deal. We're bringing guys from all the different quote-unquote tournaments here to Atlanta for this big tournament here tomorrow night. And Buddy Rose and Rip Oliver, just one of those many teams. And it's cool to see them out of their area, right, out of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was a little Roddy Piper influence on getting these two guys to do a shot.
Could have been a good suggestion. How much of it do you think was Buddy Rose calling Roddy every fucking day? But Roddy, can you get me booked? Roddy, can you get me booked? Because that sounds like the buddiest thing to do. And finally, they're going to be working this tournament. We're going to see how they fare. We're going to see them in the ring right now, though. Buddy Rose and the Ripper, Rick Oliver, taking on Ken Timms and Tim Horner, White Lightning. Horner, quicker than a hiccup, keeps him ahead of the heels early on in the matchup. Timms gets tagged in and the tables turn before too long, though. Buddy Rose, jumping back elbow, goes to town, stomping a mud hole in Timms, walking it dry like a buzzsaw on the offense. Buddy Rose came to work. He knew that he was on cable TV here, landing a backbreaker to get the win, 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Very impressive, Buddy Rose.
Yeah, and Gordon asked Piper for his comments and what he knew about Buddy Rose.
Yes.
And he was very complimentary about Buddy Rose and said that no one knows Buddy Rose better than Roddy Piper, and Buddy Rose can beat anyone in the world except Roddy Piper.
Well, Hot Rod does have that background, that history with Buddy Rose. Of course, Roddy turning babyface, feuding with the Playboy back there in 1979, 1980 time in the Portland territory. And Roddy has referenced Portland in the past. He's gave shout-outs to Brett Wayne Sawyer over there and things of that nature. So Piper knows that cable's made its way over to the West Coast, and maybe just a few Portland fans are watching, and he wants to keep the continuity, the story's going. He doesn't want to insult the fans' intelligence, which is, he says a lot, for somebody understanding cable this early on.
Plus, Piper still every now and then goes back there and makes an appearance. So he's always said that he owed Don Owen a lot. So he went out of his way to help out Don Owen when he could.
He spent a lot of years refusing to work the Portland shows when working for the WWF, and Vince was okay with it. Piper refused to work against Don Owen till the dying days anyway. And he would even come back there in 89 and 90 and help book. I think he was the one who created the juicer out of Art Bar. So, which was fun stuff. But it's fun to see Roddy Piper, playing his part and referencing Portland wrestling and his history there. And I'm sure the fans loved it. But we continue on. We're going to see the Wildfire Tommy Rich out here for an interview. Ric Flair going to interrupt here in just a moment. Gordon Solie wants to get words about the NWA World Title match tomorrow night between Flair and Harley Race. There have been many NWA World Champions, but only one has done what Harley Race has done. 6 times champion. Tommy Rich talking about the former world champions that he's wrestled, but Harley Race, he says, is one of the toughest ever. Race didn't get in the ring and hoot and holler like a Ric Flair. He just went out there and got it done. Harley is in a do-or-die situation, says the Wildfire. This could be his last shot at the gold. His desperation could mean a title change tomorrow night, thinks Tommy Rich. Well, someone in the back didn't like hearing that. That someone being the Nature Boy himself. Ric Flair returns, and boy is he hot. Taking exception to Rich out here making predictions. Tommy points out Flair has never beat Harley Race, at least not for the world title. I wrote true. Rich putting all his money now on Harley for that match, and if there's anything left, Tommy got to beat Ric Flair too. And as Rich leaves, the irate Ric Flair sticks around to cut one of his shouting promos. Irate here is the Nature Boy. Great sell job to promote the world title match tomorrow. So they don't have Harley. They don't have a VTR from Harley, so they use Tommy Rich to get the match over.
Yeah, they couldn't get Harley there to do it himself. So they get Tommy to put him over, thus putting Harley basically into the babyface for the match in the Omni. So the fans will cheer Harley. And this is where the plan is starting to shift a little bit even more, that Ric Flair is going to definitely be a heel all the time in Georgia, because this will be the last time that he's ever, even if you want to call him a tweener here. After this, he'll always be a heel. And that's even accentuated by him going off. When's the last time we saw Flair really go off on anybody?
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly when Flair makes the heel turn there in 1982. I wish I had my son Connor around. He would remember. He keeps all this stuff in the back of his head. But I know Flair's going to wind up turning heel here fairly early into 1982, if I remember correctly. So it may be going in line with that. That may be the reason they're going to keep him as a full-time heel here in the Georgia territory when he's on TBS. But he has been tweening thus far, and that's a good way to keep things level when you're working various territories as the NWA World Champion, because fans see you as this guy who could be a babyface, he could be a heel, but we know he's a good worker at the end of the day, so that way if he comes in as a good guy or a bad guy, it makes sense to your local fans. And that's kind of what they've been doing up until now, but you're right, moving forward, Ric Flair going to be all the way heel here on Georgia TV, here on cable TV. As at this point in the show, we go to a couple matches outside of the Georgia territory. We go over to All Japan, and we see a quick match joined in progress. Giant Baba scoring a win over King Curtis Iaukea. We were promised Baba and Tsuruta, I thought, in studio this week. Gordon promised us last week, but not here. Apparently the flight hasn't arrived as of yet. So we get this taped match between Baba over King Curtis. We also get a VTR from Florida of Jack and Jerry Briscoe defeating the team of Hiro Matsuda and Mr. Pogo. That had a fun finish to it because manager Oliver Humperdinck rushes in to stop Jack Briscoe's figure four. He's going to put Humperdinck in the figure four, and then as Matsuda rushes over to save his manager, Briscoe going to cradle Matsuda and pin him while the manager in the figure four. So a fun finish there in that tag match. But we got more matches here. Got to close out hour one. We got a lot going on still. Ole Anderson and Hansen out here. Going to cut another promo. Credit to Jack Briscoe, who is a great singles wrestler, they say, coming out of that VTR, but not in the tag teams. He says the Funks, they have the spinning toe hold. The Briscoes, they've got the figure four. But Stan Hansen says there's still nothing more deadly than the lariat. I'll agree to that. Stan there. Mic drop. As Ron Fuller, Leroy Brown back out as well. Fuller again showing off that Super D mask, vowing to get 2 masks tomorrow night and the $25,000 in the pocket of Leroy Brown and the Tennessee Stud. So hearing from a couple teams there. We also see Stan Hansen in singles competition at this point against Rick Thor. Ole Anderson going to remain on commentary. Is Stan going to ground and pound Thor immediately? Has a little fun with him before the lariat puts Thor down and out. 2 minutes and 43 seconds. We get to see Stan in the ring. We also hear from another team closing out this first hour. Superstar Super D responding to that Fuller and Leroy Brown promo. referring to themselves as fighting champions, stating they will take on anyone. And I do love the fact that they mention heels and faces here, name-dropping everybody involved. They're their own team, basically. Yes, they're heels, but kind of like that Bad News Brown character, Lone Wolves.
Yeah, and hey, I would have loved to see Superstar and Super D go against Ole and Hansen.
That would have been a fun match in the tournament. We'll have to see if that happens, but so many teams involved. We've seen a lot of the men in action. We've heard from quite a few. We even hear from Jerry Brisco, who sends in a quick VTR from Florida, putting over that big Omni card tomorrow night. Jerry Brisco teaming with Brother Jack, one of the many teams involved in that tournament as we go into hour number 2. Oh, God, no. Jamie, I forgave you with the GINO HERNANDEZ stuff, but Steve-O, apparently still here in Georgia.
I have no recollection of this at all. And, I love Steve-O once upon a time, but I've turned heel on Steve-O since. I have no recollection of this, and I don't remember him ever appearing again, but maybe I've just blanked him totally out of my head from back in that time period.
Well, I can't blame you for blocking it out, but even more obnoxious now in these white suits that he insists on wearing. Steve-O, nowhere to be found in hour number 1, snuck up on us here. Gonna, I guess, co-host here with Gordon in hour number 2, at least for a while. Still sidelined, he says. In fact, he mentions he may never, ever wrestle again with this wrist injury he sustained, embarking on a new career because he wants to emulate Gordon. Well, grab a bottle, Steve.
Yeah, I think I need a bottle right now.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thought. Steve-O had planned to, I guess, step in here perhaps as a color commentator alongside Gordon. Thank goodness that will not happen for the permanent anyway. Ric Flair back here for hour number 2 says nobody can emulate the Nature Boy. There is only one, and thank God for that. He apologizes for being hot-headed in hour number 1, but he is the man, and he had to tell it like it was. Ric Flair out here making sure the fans know that, he's the world champion and he plans to remain the world champion after tomorrow night. So we go to the ring for singles competition. Jimmy Garvin taking on Bobby Garrett. Garvin coming off that win last week over Buzz Sawyer and the subsequent beatdown that he suffered at the hands of Sawyer and Ron Bass thereafter. So Jimmy Garvin comes in hot here, aggressive all over Garrett. Bobby finally with a couple of shots, but only pisses Garvin off, who slaps on the sleeper hold. But with Jim's back turned to the ropes, Buzz Sawyer climbing up those ropes, leaping off down into the spine of Garvin, drawing the DQ. 2 minutes. Buzz even going to stop by to say Garvin is learning a lesson here tonight. You don't mess with Buzz Sawyer.
And the intensity of this feud just continues.
Yeah, they picked this up pretty quickly, I have to say. Honestly, I didn't even really expect this to happen. I really didn't recall from my first watching many years ago, this era of 1982. But Jimmy Garvin and Buzz Sawyer, very interesting, very quick, very hot. And Buzz very upset that he lost last week right there on TV. Talk about being humiliated after begging, pleading for competition for seemingly a month or 2 now. Buzz finally gets it, and the first thing he does is he gets too cocky. Jimmy Garvin pins him, and now he's coming for revenge. Diving off into the spine of Jimmy Garvin there, drawing the DQ for Garvin. But we follow that up with a Buzz Sawyer match. And his opponent this week, Tim Horner. Is Buzz going to wrestle Horner down to the mat? Tim surprising Buzz with the speed to get out. But Sawyer stays on top, drives him down with a nice takedown, almost a suplex of sorts. Sawyer putting Horner down, but can't keep him down. And that seems to upset the Mad Dog, who becomes more aggressive as the match progresses. We begin to hear "We Want Jim" chants from the fans talking about Jimmy Garvin as Sawyer lands a neckbreaker, but he pulls Horner up the count of 2. Then a vertical suplex before dancing around in the ring, Buzz Sawyer having a little fun. And here comes Jimmy Garvin for the DQ. Garvin attacking Buzz Sawyer. Match goes about 5 minutes, 6 seconds is what I have here. But Ron Bass out to make it 2-on-1 before too long. The Armstrongs, Tommy Rich finally clear the ring, but Jimmy Garvin again down 2-1 there from the Mad Dog and Ron Bass.
Yeah, and there goes the intensity just continuing on. Good booking by Ole here. He should be credited for this nice little feud they got going.
Well, the back-to-back match thing, sometimes you look at that and you go, man, so close together. You put this back-to-back, it's almost obvious, but at the same time, you want to keep it fresh in the fans' mind what just happened.
Yes, and Tim Horner, I believe this is his earliest appearances in Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, I don't remember
him being on before.
Nope. It's good to see White Lightning here in his earliest inception as a professional wrestler, 1982. So yeah, he's definitely green at this point, but he's already looking good out there. He had a great match with Buzz Sawyer, good TV match anyway. And we hear from Buzz, along with Ron Bass and Kevin Sullivan, as they state, that's what happens. We protect ourselves, says Ron Bass, referring to the heel unit. They're going to protect themselves, and that's what happens when you cross them. Buzz says he is not done with Garvin yet.
And I really like this trio, and I'm not a Ron Bass guy, but watching this years later, these three could have been a nice faction. That's the word I was looking for. That I wish would have lasted much longer than it did.
Well, I tell you what, I like Ron Bass more in this type of situation than I did in the cowboy gimmick with Blackjack Mulligan. So I'm happy Mulligan left because, that's been done to death. The Outlaws, the Cowboys, the Blackjacks, that type of gimmick. And that's really never worked for me with Ron Bass. So just a beat 'em up, nasty guy. Yeah, it works a little better here because we have a little bit of everything here when you look at Sawyer, Bass, and Sullivan standing there together. We also hear at this point from Tommy Rich, who doesn't like what he just saw in the ring, another 2-on-1 beating. Ron Bass, he don't have the guts. Ain't nary one of them have the guts to get it done by themselves, says the Wildfire here. Before we get a couple more interviews from the Superstar and Super D, just more of that North End tour talk. And Les Thornton, going to start out with Brad Armstrong today, but he will be back more often to defend his World Junior title.
Yeah, Les Thornton was always presented himself as a very serious wrestler.
Yeah.
And nice choice for a World Junior Heavyweight Champion because he was dangerous. He didn't really bend the rules, but he was really rough in the ring.
Kind of like a Billy Robinson, where they didn't really need to cheat.
Perfect.
They just needed to be really aggressive, very nasty in the ring.
And that's the way he was. And so we're getting the best out of Thornton right now.
Right. And I tell you what, man, you want to put a title on a guy where somebody can't screw them, somebody can't beat them. You can give it to Les Thornton and not have to worry about that either. As he's in the ring here, taking on Brad Armstrong in a 10-minute time limit. This is a non-title match, but it can easily put Brad in position if he gets a win here. And Les going to tie Brad up early after Armstrong tried to speed things up. Armstrong wiggling out and turns it into a hammerlock of his own, though, on the mat, surprising Thornton. Whole lots of nothing here, though, for quite a while. Kind of disappointing, to be honest with you. Les Thornton finally gets free of the hammerlock, lays in some salty forearms and a gut-wrench suplex, gets Les a 2 count on Brad. But Armstrong pops up first, goes back to his hammerlock, even going to land a sunset flip for a 2 count of his own. Brad, though, tries an inside cradle, but the bell sounds at the count of 2. It is a time limit draw. Match actually goes about 9.5 minutes, so they give him about 10 minutes here, legit, on TV.
Yeah, it was very good. And matter of fact, Roddy Piper said that Brad Armstrong must be watching Roddy Piper
tapes. That's right.
He's using a lot of his maneuvers in this match. And we also found out another goodie from Gordon Soley that Nick Patrick has been given a supreme rating by the NWA Board of Advisors.
I didn't catch that. It's good to know. Congratulations, Nick, on your supreme, whatever you just called that, Jamie.
Supreme rating.
Supreme rating. I don't know what that means, but to be a professional wrestling referee and get a supreme rating, I don't know if those go hand in hand, but I'll buy it here.
Hey, Nick Patrick had a nice long run as a referee.
He certainly did, man. He certainly did. I've been watching him in WCW as of late as well, so I've seen tons of Nick Patrick. And, we go into another promo. American Dream Dusty Rhodes back out here, says he's always looking to be cooking and shucking and jiving, peeping and hiding, as he talks about, and I quote, the Dragon Flash, whatever kind of match it is. That's what he calls the fucking Dragon Shai. The Dragon Flash, whatever kind of match it is. And we hear a fan shout, Dragon Shai. And then Dusty responds, see, the fans know. And that's all that matters, apparently, to Dusty. I wrote in my notes, only Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, only Dusty Rhodes. Absolutely. He doesn't need to know what it is to put the match over. He's Dusty. That's all that matters.
Well, we've heard him call it multiple things in the past. I think he even got it right last week, but this week, or a couple weeks ago anyway, this week it is the Dragon Flash, whatever kind of match it is. I had to laugh. But again, I don't know that I've ever heard another wrestler get away with these type of things, putting over some deadly match, but only Dusty could get away with something like that. As he says, they're going to give me a big old stick, Jack, calls it his equalizer, heading into the big no disqualification Dragon Shai match tomorrow night at the Omni.
And being Dusty, he also wants to know why Rodney Piper leaves every time Dusty Rhodes comes.
But that Rodney Piper go every time I come out, he'll be Biff.
Also, did you catch in that interview he dropped the name Sergeant Slaughter?
I did, yeah.
Which is surprising because Slaughter never appeared on Georgia television.
It made me wonder, did Dusty go up there and do a shot in the garden or something? But I don't have that memorized off the top of my head.
I don't remember the two of them meeting in the garden, but it's possible. Or it might have just been up in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, it could have been absolutely by that point in time. You're dead on there. So, we got Gary Hart out here as well, showing off a shiner. Gary Hart with a black eye this week, as he says Dusty will pay for this black eye tomorrow night, implying that somehow Rhodes is the one that gave it to him. But I did a little looking. I had to look. You know I did, Jamie. What was Gary Hart doing this week? And he makes a stop off outside of Georgia to Tyler, Texas, February 23rd, Great Kabuki, taking on Kerry Von Erich. And anything with the word Von Erich leads me to believe that was likely where he got the black eye.
Yeah, maybe a little discus punch action.
Could have been anything. Kevin could have ran in, caught a foot to the face. I don't know.
Yeah. Like you said, anything's possible with a Von Erich. It could have even been Fritz potatoing.
Yeah, it could have been Fritz, but it's usually always Kevin.
Kevin.
Yeah, well, poor Gary this week with the black eye. We go back to the ring. We're going to see Rick Harris take on Ken Timms. Well, that's interesting. Timms with some arm work early on, but the larger Harris keeps him grounded. Finally, Harris back to his feet, though, and let the clubbing begin, Jamie. Stiff kick on a Timms backdrop attempt and a gut-wrench suplex, followed by the leg drop, giving Rick Harris his first pinfall victory here, at least on TV, in Georgia. Black Bart going over 3 minutes, 49 seconds. Let me ask you a question. Rick Harris, Black Bart, had one of the worst leg drops in professional wrestling history. Why did this guy decide that was going to be his finisher for years to come?
I guess he kept telling whatever promoter it was or booker, oh, I can perfect this. I can perfect it.
What's your move?
That's the only theory I can have.
Leg drop? Okay, whatever you say. Get it done out there. You know, I saw Ernie Ladd. He threw a really bad leg drop too, but it was late in his career when Ernie was doing it. So he would almost land in a horizontal position with the leg drop. And so Harris is somewhere in between a full version leg drop and kind of that Ernie Ladd style. And so just not pretty. It never gets pretty, to be honest with you, but he liked it. And so he used it. And we go on to tag team action now. Kevin Sullivan teaming with Ron Bass to take on Ron Horn and Tom Prichard. As Gordon Soley verifies, it will now be Buzz Sawyer versus Jimmy Garvin at the Omni tomorrow. So Sawyer being pulled out of the tag team tournament. And instead, it looks like Kevin going to replace him. So we get Kevin and Bass kind of prepping for the big tournament tomorrow night by having a match here on TV. Ron Horn doesn't fare too well to start. Finally, gets to tag in Tom Prichard, who does his best against both of the heels. But a tag back to Horn proves to end that quick run in the ring. Kevin Sullivan mauling Thorne here. Sullivan dumping Horn across the knee of Ron Bass, going to get the heels to win 229. So how do you think they looked here as a tag team?
Oh, I thought they looked pretty good. I like that three-man combination of those guys, even though there's only two of them in the ring. I thought they gelled well.
I understand they're building them up here as a tag team, as a unit, as some of the top heels in the company at this point in time. But compared to the rest of the teams involved, it just feels very lackluster. But again, I see where they are on the card, so I guess it makes sense to fill them in one of the slots in the tournament. We'll see how they fare as we go on. We hear from Sullivan, Buzz, and Ron Bass out here. Buzz mentioning his match now with Jimmy Garvin tomorrow night. So Sullivan will team with Ron Bass indeed at the Omni. So they just formed the team this week. We'll have to wait and see how they do. Both guys are pretty good singles athletes. See how they work as a tag team and against real competition tomorrow night. We also hear again from Gary Hart and Kabuki. Kabuki back out here with nunchucks. This time, the Boogeyman coming for Dusty Rhodes' soul at the Omni, apparently. That's going to be interesting. Also, the Ripper, Rick Oliver and Buddy Rose out here, once again promoting themselves as the West Coast team, coming to take the World Tag Team titles back to the West Coast and beyond. And then it's back to the ring to see them in the ring. Buddy Rose and Rick Rip, call him what you want, Oliver, battling Mike Jackson and Rick Thor to close out the show. Jackson surprising Buddy early on with a walk-up, the rope side headlock takeover. Nice maneuver there. Even a nice dropkick there from Jackson. Buddy loved the bumps, so worked well. But Jackson going to try to go to the well once too often, tries to walk up the ropes a second time. But Buddy going to counter this time with a nice back suplex as the enhancement guys trade a few tags, but nothing really seems to work for Jackson and Thor. Rip Oliver going to put Thor away with a backbreaker, giving the West Coasters another win, 246. Good to see them utilized twice here while they were in town.
Yeah, why just use them once? You have to use them twice.
So we didn't get Jumbo and Baba, which is interesting because that's who Gordon was promoting for the match on TV, even though they were promoting Baba in a singles match. We're going to get to that in a minute for the Omni, but against Terry Gordy of all people, who's I think been down in Alabama by this point. But Gordy coming back again, that might be what sells Baba on bringing Gordy back to All Japan for the years to come.
Maybe that's why he's working this match. Maybe Baba requested Gordy for it because he'd already been over in Japan by this point.
Yeah, and so Baba probably wanted to get another shot in the ring with Terry Gordy, somebody he trusted, somebody he knew he could have a good match with. And I don't know that Baba was having good matches by the 1980s, but man, was he still lighting a fire in the early and mid 70s, in my opinion anyway. Had some really good matches there. It's unfortunate that most of what people have seen of Baba, the later years, kind of like watching Andre in the later years too.
Right, it was more or less a comedy act toward the end.
So we close out this week's TV. Gary Hart and Kabuki again, because they said, wait, we got a minute of TV time left. Who wants it? Of course, Gary Hart raises his hand back out here with Kabuki for a final sell job for the Omni and Dusty Rhodes. Going to wrap up TV. So the Omni card looks like this, Jamie. We've got the big tag team tournament. Jimmy Garvin versus Buzz Sawyer. The Giant Baba bringing his PWF heavyweight title to the States to defend against Terry Gordy. Kabuki and Dusty Rhodes, and a Dragon Shai and world champion Ric Flair defending against Harley Race. Has to be one of the biggest cards in Omni history.
Yeah, I was excited for it, and I remember sitting on that phone just dialing until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Waiting for the results to pop.
Yeah, because it wasn't sophisticated, back then. They just had an answer machine, and you couldn't leave a message, but they left the message for you.
So who was doing the results for you? Who was doing the results more often than not?
I don't know whose voice that was.
Okay. I didn't know if they had Freddie doing it. I didn't know. I knew Gordon wouldn't be doing it, but I was just curious.
Once in a while, you'd hear Freddie's voice or some other Southern gentleman.
Well, we're going to try to wrap things up here, guys, real quickly. We've got a couple of house shows to get to before we get to the Omni. Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium, February 27th on the card. Brad Armstrong over the French Angel. Kevin Sullivan teaming with Stan Hansen over the Oates brothers. Jimmy Garvin defeating Ron Bass in a bull rope match. Roddy Piper battling Bob Armstrong.
Wow.
Oh, beating Bob Armstrong by a count out there in Augusta. And Tommy Rich over Ole Anderson, kind of a random match there. I'm assuming the national title. Ole kind of referenced this. Going to be wrestling Tommy in the days to come. So here it is. Tommy Rich over Ole. Roddy over Armstrong on a count out. Garvin and Bass in a bull rope. Hansen and Sullivan teaming. Quite the card there in Augusta.
I think that's only the second time we've seen Piper work in the Georgia territory.
I believe so.
He only wrestled that one show at the Omni with Bob. So
right.
I was surprised to see that name pop up there.
Well, Piper's still working pretty much full-time in the Mid-Atlantic territory, so he's only making the shots for TV at this point, and apparently a couple of the house shows anyway. One of them there on the 27th. We're also going to see on the 27th in Gadsden, Alabama, the Coliseum. Kabuki over Bobby Garrett. Big Red over Ricky Harris. Buzz Sawyer battling Tom Prichard to a draw. Leroy Brown and Ron Fuller over Superstar and Super D. Kind of lackluster, the B show there in Gadsden, which takes us to February the 28th. Couple of shows, including the Omni, guys. Chattanooga, though, at the Memorial Auditorium also. Earlier in the day, Tom Prichard over French Angel. Leroy Brown defeating Ricky Harris. Buzz Sawyer over Brad Armstrong. Ron Bass beating Jimmy Garvin in a Texas street fight. Plus Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen proving why they're in this tournament here, scoring a win over Ron Fuller and Tommy Rich. Great main event there in Chattanooga, but also just look across the board here and you see how many of these guys on the Chattanooga show also work the Omni. It's amazing that I don't want to call it WrestleMania, but your big arena, your garden show, and you're working a doubleheader that day.
Yeah. And wasn't Chattanooga pretty well? Oh, I'm awful in my geography. Not too far away from Atlanta, maybe an hour and a half ride. Plus the Omni didn't start until 8 o'clock at night. So if Chattanooga was a 1 o'clock in the afternoon show, they had plenty of time to get there.
I'm not questioning. I mean, just the semantics of all of it to really put all your eggs in one basket on the day of your big event, right? What happens if a car breaks down? What happens if one of the main guys get hurt doing something there in Chattanooga? Because they're not half-assing it there in Chattanooga, right? So they're going to bring it back here later, though, guys. Here it is. 13 matches here in the Omni in Atlanta, February the 28th, what we've been waiting for, what we've been building to for several weeks now here in the territory and the last couple weeks here on the Regional Rasslin program. And we're going to look at the World Tag Team Title Tournament, the Atlanta region. We're going to look at the results of that first. First round matches, 5 matches. We're going to have to wait and see how that works out. Going to feature, well, it looks like all the teams actually came to play for once here. Well, most of them anyway. We'll talk about that. Jack and Jerry Briscoe defeating Kevin Sullivan and Ron Bass, eliminating them in the first round. So the Briscoes over Sullivan and Bass. Of course, Sullivan replacing Buzz Sawyer, but that was announced on TV. It makes sense. Terry and Dory Funk Jr. This could have been a fun, interesting match. The Funks over Buddy Rose and Rip Oliver.
I could just see Terry and Buddy selling for each other.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't even think of to that level, but just to see something different, because the Funks didn't really go up to Portland and work. So to see, this is a kind of a dream match in many ways, just something different. And Ron Fuller and Leroy Brown will advance. They score a win. Of course, no titles on the line here over the Masked Superstar and Super D. Nor do I believe they stole their masks in the process. But Fuller and Leroy Brown do advance here over the tag team champion, the local national tag team champions. So title's not on the line because this is a tournament match. So makes sense that they get a pin here over the champs, could prolong their feud overall. Also, Tenryu here along teaming with Jumbo Tsuruta. They did arrive from Japan, scoring a win over the Mongolian Stomper and Ricky Harris. Now, I don't know if they had planned this in advance. I'm sure you saw on the upcoming Omni card promos, they were just stating that the Mongolian Stomper was returning. They never announced his partner. Yeah,
so I wonder if they might have had a no-show here, or it was a strictly last-minute idea. Because I can't see Stomper wanting to come in just for a one-shot and team with Ricky Harris.
Well, again, maybe more of that Fuller influence. Just, hey, come on up. You want to work an Omni card, make a few bucks. And obviously, they're just looking to bring all these names, and they want to make this feel bigger than usual. So we have the Briscoes and the Funks. We have Tenryu and Tsuruta. So why not bring in the Stomper as well? And of course, they had no idea who his partner was going to be. We'll figure it out when we get there, because they never even announced a partner for him until we got here. And then finally, in the 5th match of the first round, Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen do advance over what was supposed to be the team of Brad and Bob Armstrong. But Bob Armstrong, a no-show. So instead, it's Hansen and Ole over Brad Armstrong and Tommy Rogers. Yeah, I love Tommy. I loved him in the Fantastics, but kind of lackluster here in the World Tag Title Tournament. Tommy replacing Bob. Now, many might say, well, maybe Bob didn't make it in time. Maybe Bob was injured. So I did a little digging. Nope, turns out Bob was working Asheville, North Carolina on this night. It was Roddy Piper and Austin Idledolin, what a team, defeating Bob Armstrong and Ray Stevens. So they had to have known the Bullet wasn't going to be here.
All right, now, Bob didn't work the afternoon show in Chattanooga, right?
Correct.
Okay. So why would Ole do that? That makes absolutely, no sense unless that was just a last-minute idea to send him up to Mid-Atlantic.
I don't know how, the Asheville bookings were back in that time. I don't know if they were hot-shotting things or if Bob was, whatever Bob was doing, maybe specific to Asheville.
Unless that was a day show, too, and Bob might have, got hurt.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why Bob would be working in the Carolinas when Brad's down here in Georgia. So, you can create any kind of, scenario you want. I think at the end of the day, my personal opinion is, at least at some point, they realized Bob wasn't going to be here and they didn't promote it as such. Because why do that? Because card's subject to change. True. Why announce that Tommy Rogers, of all people's, filling in for the Bullet? So, no offense, Tommy, R.I.P., buddy, but you weren't that big of a star in 1982. At least not yet. So, but they do get eliminated. Ole and Stan advance on to round 2, and this is where it gets kind of wonky because we kind of have 3 semifinals. It's not really a round robin, but I don't know. It's just kind of interesting because we have 5 teams advancing and 3 kind of semifinal matches. So just stick with me here, guys. We see Tenryu and Jumbo Tsuruta defeat Ron Fuller and Leroy Brown, eliminating that team. We see the Briscoes over the Funk Brothers. Finally, the Briscoes could beat some Funks here. So we know the Japanese team and the Briscoes advance on. And that puts the Briscoes all the way into the finals somehow. And the Japanese team have to wrestle again in another semifinal bout against Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen. And this time it's Ole and Hansen going over on Tenryu and Jumbo. I feel like they got the short into that one. But Ole and Stan advance on to the main event, the finals there. Going to see Hansen and Ole collect that $25,000 purse by defeating Jack and Jerry Briscoe.
Yeah, those last 4 matches had to air in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely.
With those names, especially a Briscoe against the Funks. But who else was really going to win this tournament? We all knew deep down Ole and Stan were going to walk away with this bad boy.
The Booker is in there. I would have to imagine we could eliminate any team out here that isn't from the Georgia territory, and then you subtract guys like Ricky Harris and Tommy Rogers teams, and you kind of can narrow it down pretty quickly. Ole and Hansen walking out the winners here of the Atlanta region version of the World Title Tournament. And man, what did they bring out the guns? Talk about having to make some paydays. I hope they drew well this week at the Omni. And we had 4 other matches, non-tournament matches we're going to get into before we close up shop here. Jimmy Garvin getting yet another win over Buzz Sawyer. Had to piss off the future Mad Dog, who's probably becoming a Mad Dog right about now. PWF Heavyweight Champion Giant Baba successfully defending his title over Terry Gordy. Also exists on film, obviously. Great Kabuki battling Dusty Rhodes to a no contest in a Dragon Shai match. I don't know how you do that. Dragon Shai match. They've been building it up for, it feels like a month, and we battled to a no contest. So we might be bringing this one back again.
Well, we've already had it 3 times. Hey, so what's a 4th?
I guess I don't know what they're going to come up with next, but for these two, if they do at all. And in the main event of the night, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair battles Harley Race to a double disqualification. So a no contest and a double DQ. But hey, we see winners there in the tournament finals. Baba over Gordy, Jim Garvin over Buzz Sawyer. Overall, 13 matches. I think the people got their money's worth.
And most of those matches had to be, especially on the tag team matches, had to be 5 minutes or less.
13 matches, certainly a lot of those matches definitely ran shorter than we would be accustomed to. I don't know that Ric Flair and Harley Race went longer than 10 minutes, to be honest with you. But I mean, when you get that much, quantity of quality, you can't really complain. They keep the matches short, which probably kept the guys on their toes, which probably made the night fly by.
And back then, you know what? You could get away with the 2 non-finishes in matches like that because look at all the action you got in the tag team. So you get away with it on that particular night.
Well, Hansen and Ole win this leg of the tournament, and Ole's still booking for the time being up there in Crockett, so he'll continue to promote the tag tournament up there as well until he takes off with the belts when he goes sideways with Crockett. But that's going to wrap it up this week, Jamie. Another 15 days worth of 1982 here in the Georgia Championship Wrestling world. We close out the month of February, 2 months down already. It feels like we just got started here on the new project, but we're still got a long way to go. 10 months still left in the project, but we are in fact done with the month of February. So that wraps that up, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes here in the month of March.
Yeah, month of March is going to pick up too, and it just keeps picking. This whole year is just builds momentum, that all the way through the end of 82 into the beginning of 83. So I'm going to enjoy the ride. I really enjoyed this show a lot because, like I said, I believe I must have missed that February 20th episode because I had no memory of GINO HERNANDEZ coming back for a second time. Oh, one more comment I wanted to make during the Steve-O appearance.
Yes.
I wonder if that was to build up Steve-O to work. Where did they have tapings? Macon and Columbus. I wonder if he was doing a color commentary on one of those shows. I recently found out that Macon ran into early 84 and Columbus continued doing television even after Ole came back, with the Bob Roop and later in 85.
Yeah.
So I wonder if during that particular time period, Steve-O was doing the color on those shows. I don't know who did the play-by-play because I've really never saw any of those shows because I don't think they ever put them on tape.
I can verify that Steve-O was not in the Georgia territory for several more months nor years. That much I know because Steve will pop back up in wrestling results and things like that. So,
but I'm thinking maybe the purpose is that Steve-O was brought out on the TV just for that to pump him up for his color commentary, maybe on one of those 2 shows.
The irony of it all is Steve-O says he wants to follow in Gordon's footsteps, and then of course recently somebody posted that drunken Steve-O promo from the AWA, and it's like, well, congratulations, Steve, you followed in Gordon's footsteps.
Because I don't remember Steve-O after this either.
I hope not. I certainly hope. I'm done saying this is his last appearance because every time I say that, he just comes. It's like Candyman. You say his name and there he is. So I'm just gonna let it slide and hopefully this is the end. I bid adieu, but we'll see. Never say never with Steve-O here in the Georgia territory. That he's been here forever, guys, since the beginning of the project. He just won't go away.
And the other guy we've been missing is Freddie Miller. I don't think Freddie's appeared on the last couple of shows.
Well, maybe Freddie's taking a long-deserved vacation, I hope, at this point. But we know Freddie's going to be around for a long time to come. But now, we're going to wrap things up. Jamie, I want to remind everybody you guys can check Jamie out over there on the other ship, of course, more often than not. You guys got the big SummerSlam preview, which actually may have already dropped, and the SummerSlam review on the way, of course.
Yes.
And so much more going on there over the other ship, all the fun conversations you guys have over there. If you have anything else, Jamie, let the fans know. Otherwise, we're going to say goodbye.
All right, now you can catch me in early August. I'll be appearing on the Brian Travel Shooting the Shishnet show. That'll be live on a Tuesday night, the first Tuesday in August. I'll be on that one.
All right, very good. Jamie making the rounds there. Jamie Jammie Ward, want to thank you again for stopping by for some more regional wrestling. Another couple hours of fun here, talking about the old days, the good old days, the ones you remember. Hey, you lived them, man. I was just a little 2-year-old. I wasn't even 2 yet, actually. It wasn't even August. So, yeah, but no, it's fun going back and reliving this era and knowing that it was so big here up in Ohio getting into this point. So the stories I heard growing up about, the Georgia territory and just the little flashes and glimpses I remember on my TV screen, Channel 61, Local 61, because we didn't have cable yet, but we had, the syndicated TV. And obviously I was too young to really remember a whole lot, but I remember, a lot of the talent and things. So it's fun, man. It's definitely a fun time going back and doing this with you, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. In the meantime, I want to remind everybody to check out the ultimate tier, one of the many tiers over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Jamie's been joining me for Regional Rasslin Unreeled. It's basically the program here on steroids, a watch-along, a video version where we go back and continue to dissect other territories. So having fun with that also with you, Jamie.
Yeah, I have a great time doing that, Ray. Anytime you want me, you don't have to twist my arm to do that podcast at all.
No, it's you're a natural fit there. We have a great time every time talking everything from Southwest to Mid-South, world-class, Central States, and the list goes on, and more to come. So stay tuned for that. Look for that out on our social media. But for right now, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you again, Jamie. We'll be back soon. More regional wrestling on the way.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ray.